All right, it is time to get back into the conversations as to trades that went down that are now confirmed. And this is a lot more difficult nowadays than it used to be, because before we had Cap Friendly to help us out with that. I'm sorry, Puckpedia, you're not there yet. Once your NHL draft page has all of the trades that were involved with each of the draft picks, then we'll start talking. But today we are talking about one of the biggest trades the Red Wings have made this decade, and how, after a year's worth of waiting, the picks in the trade have been used and the trade itself has been finalized. On July 9th, 2023, the Detroit Red Wings acquired the signing rights to one Alex DeBrincat from the Ottawa Senators in exchange for a package that included Dominik Kubalik, Donovan Sebrango, the 2024 fourth-round pick from Detroit, and a 2024 first-round pick from the Boston Bruins. Now, the page in which I'm actually using this from is the Wayback Machine, archive.org. Cap Friendly and their NHL 2024 draft page is still available on the Wayback Machine. That's how I'm able to see this, but unfortunately, the most recent screenshot that they have before Cap Friendly went down was before the draft ended up happening. So some of the draft picks here, you can see that they're listed out, but they're not actually used. It's kind of confusing, it's kind of sad. Unfortunately for Puckpedia, their NHL draft page does not have the trade information for any of the picks, which makes this video a lot more difficult to make. But there were conditions on this trade, in particular with the Boston Bruins' 25th overall pick, which ended up being the pick sent over to Ottawa. Conditions. Detroit has the option to send their own or Boston's 2024 first-round pick to the Sens. In the event that the Bruins' 2024 first is a top 10 pick, Boston can retain the pick and transfer their 2025 first-round pick instead. Detroit will then have the option of sending Boston's 2025 unprotected first or their own 2024 first to Ottawa. Now, the Bruins played very well this previous season. They ended up doing some damage and making the second round. So their pick was a little bit lower, 25th overall, and that is the pick that the Detroit Red Wings ended up sending to Ottawa in the DeBrincat trade. Now, this is where our job gets a little bit difficult, because we have to talk about the assets that were involved. Alex DeBrincat, unfortunately, had himself a season that I won't say was unanimously fantastic for Detroit. I mean, he had points, and he was good. 67 points in 82 games played is not bad, but when you consider the expectations that were bestowed upon this guy, the fact that he was a multi-time 40-goal scorer with the Chicago Blackhawks, how he did have 70 points in 2 seasons over there, but when he went over to Ottawa, he had 66 points, which is, exactly the same as what he did in Detroit. It's just, it was kind of obvious that this was a guy that wasn't really playing with everything he had in the tank. Ottawa fans were a little bit frustrated, saying, hey, what's up with this guy? Where's that 40-goal scorer? Where's that near 80-point player? Some nights he's taking shifts off. Other nights he just looks disengaged. And ultimately, it boiled down to DeBrincat getting his rights traded over to Detroit. I'd say that Wings fans were a lot more, let's just say, lenient on him. I don't think that he played as poorly in Motown as he did in Ottawa, even though the point production was exactly the same. It's kind of weird to say that for a guy who did produce a good amount of points. It's just there were a lot of expectations for this guy. And playing him with Patrick Kane, you started to see him get that mojo back. He had started out the year in 23-24 super hot. I mean, he was one of the top goal scorers and point guys in the NHL to open up the season in like the first week or two. But things started to really slow down in terms of his overall goal production as the year went on, and you kind of had to watch with selective viewings to really see what made DeBrincat such a special player. Either way, I'd say that when it comes to DeBrincat, there's a lot of excitement and optimism for his future. 26 years old, he signed on till the end of 2027, making $7.875 million a year. I'd say that the addition of Patrick Kane was a huge one in this respect. There's a lot of mojo and momentum being built up from that pairing carrying over from Chicago, and I think Red Wings fans, for the most part, have no choice but to focus on the positive and be excited for this player and what he could bring to the Wings. However, when it comes to the assets that were sent over to Ottawa in this trade, let's go out there and talk about the roster player. Dominik Kubalik was a very underwhelming Ottawa Senator, and that is the most unfortunate part about this entire trade for Ottawa. He had 45 points in 81 games played with the Detroit Red Wings and was a 30-goal scorer in his rookie year in Chicago, but In his season in Ottawa, he had 15 points in 74 games played, 11 goals, and 4 assists. He did not contribute much outside of the limited goal production, and the fact is, when Dominik Kubalik went over to Team Czechia at the World Championships, he was a near point per game guy, and I saw a lot of Ottawa Senators fans being pissed off about his performance in that tournament, saying, wait a minute, why is he so good? Like, why is he actually competent at producing offense now when he didn't show any of that with the Ottawa Senators in the regular season? Is this just a guy who, like DeBrincat, wasn't really giving it his all with the Ottawa Senators? Was there a reason for him to kind of slow down and really pick the pace back up once the World Championship started? What's going on here? What's up with this dude? Now Kubalik is a free agent. He was not retained by the Ottawa Senators, and as of this moment, he does not have an NHL home. Again, I'm recording this on the night of July 10th, or did I say that already? No, I did not say that yet. Apologies. Dominik Kubalik was an underwhelming Ottawa Senator, but he wasn't the only player that they acquired in this trade. You also had yourselves Donovan Sebrango, acquired by Ottawa, who is a defenseman in the OHL that I actually did like a lot for Detroit heading into that 2023-2024 season. This season, though, Donovan Sebrango, who is 22 years old, played for the Belleville Senators. He had 7 points in 35 games played and 2 points with the Allen Americans in 4 games in the ECHL. Sebrango had a pretty good stint in the Kitchener Rangers system before playing in Grand Rapids, and unfortunately, his progression offensively was just nowhere to be found, which is kind of expected out of this guy. He was a lot more of a defensively minded player when he was drafted, but to see his play round itself out to a point where he does get ECHL time, it wasn't really showing too much promise. I don't think Sebrango has much NHL potential at this point. Obviously, I'd love for him to prove me wrong. That'd be great if the guy went out there and said, screw you, Lego, I'm actually going to make the NHL next year, and you're going to eat your words. Like, okay, great, fantastic. We love to see younger prospects who are more outliers in the draft prove us all wrong. But Sebrango is more so just a Belleville Senators guy, AHL defenseman depth, maybe ECHL level if you're catching him on a bad day. But these are not the only 2 assets that were acquired by Ottawa in the trade. You also had yourselves the 25th overall pick, which the Ottawa Senators received, which actually was not used by Ottawa to make this pick. They actually traded the Boston Bruins 2024 fifth that they got in the DeBrincat trade back to Boston in exchange for Linus Ullmark. So, okay, there's a really big win for the Ottawa Senators if you wanted to say that they had some good come out of this Alex DeBrincat trade situation. They used that pick along with Kastelik and Jonas Korpisalo to get Ullmark, a guy who will hopefully be the next best thing in net. We can talk about the bigger implications of the trade tree, Mark Kastelik and Korpisalo, but I think that'd be getting a bit too complicated here. And then you have yourselves the 112th overall pick in the 4th round. This was the Red Wings' own 4th that was sent over to Ottawa. And with this draft pick, the Ottawa Senators selected out of the Minnetonka Skippers in the USHS, Javon Moore. Now, if you had been paying attention to the channel, you would have seen that we actually did make a video about this guy. He's arguably the most underrated prospect in the entire 2024 draft. And he's very, very raw. We made the video, we had a lot of positive reception to the draft pick. He could be seen as a colossal sleeper because he's a big dude with some really good skill. If anything, this could be the most underrated asset the Ottawa Senators got in that DeBrincat trade a year after the fact, because the fact that a 4th round pick is even being discussed in this kind of way is a big deal. And you could say, oh, Lego, you're just hyping up prospects like you always do. Well, we didn't make a single video about the Ottawa Senators drafting anybody in this year's draft aside from Javon Moore. I could have gone with the easier route and said, oh, look at that, they drafted Yakemchuk, that's crazy. Like, there are topics there, but there were just so many other names that we had to focus on and other teams that I personally wanted to focus on that the biggest one for Ottawa in my mind was Javon Moore, and that was a big note in the scouting community on social media saying, hey, they got this guy out of the Minnesota high school leagues. He was so good, and he's such an intriguing prospect. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as to this final piece being included in the Alex DeBrincat trade return. The Detroit Red Wings acquired Alex DeBrincat in exchange for Dominik Kubalik, Donovan Sebrango, a 1st-round pick that was eventually traded for Linus Ullmark, and then Javon Moore as well. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this trade and all the details being finalized. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.